Hey there, film fans.
I'm Jeff.
I'm Dave.
And I'm John, and welcome to The Love of Cinema, a pod in which we'll challenge one another to discuss movies both new and old with a strictly positive critical eye.
That's right, folks. No lazy negativity. No, oh, I just didn't like it. And definitely no, this movie's a piece of shit. Or else you will be called out and you will drink.
So pour yourself a glass, join us, and give it up for the films we love and perhaps the films that need some love.
On this week's episode, we'll be discussing several things. The first episode here for us, so we were trying to decide on a structure that might be fun for us all to talk about, especially trying to put this drinking game into it. So Academy Awards just happened. We figured we would give a shout out to Parasite right up at the front. It is not the main film we're going to be discussing this week because we thought 1917 was going to win.
We did.
Whoops.
We did.
Yeah, that happened to us. So
I didn't think Parasite had the legs.
yeah, not
was
an
wrong.
upset.
I'll
No,
call it. I
hey,
was
It's
wrong.
deserving.
it's more than deserving. It was. I wanted it to win Best Picture.
Oh, me too. I really did.
Yeah.
Vegas thought it would be 1917. I put my money where Vegas tells me to.
It was the upset you wanted. It was the upset
Sure.
you were looking forward to. So, we are going to be discussing two films from the Academy Best Picture list. It's going to be 1917 and Little Women. And each of the films are going to have a correlated film that we thought would be fun to discuss as well. Something that could have to do with the same topic, something that could have to do with the same period, the same genre, and we will reveal those films after we talk about each of them. So first up, 1917. Here we go. Jeff, what'd you think?
I was absolutely blown away. It's not what I expected. I don't know, because I knew they were doing the gimmick with the one, filming it as if there was one continuous shot, like Birdman. And that's sort of all I knew. And I didn't realize how personal of a story it was going to be, how they were going to be able to get the characters going from point A to B to C to D so well. And of course I saw it in IMAX, so I really felt like the movie, I just felt like it really came alive. Like when they crossed no man's land, I was really uncomfortable in my seat, and the best reason.
Let's talk really quickly about why everyone was so. I think we all just kind of agreed it was unexpected. How did they rolled this film out on December 25th, Christmas, and the way they were leading up to it with the teasers and everything. There were some, I remember seeing some competitions that they were sponsoring for the best short film of a 2-minute one take. So I think everyone was starting to hear about the thing they were going to be doing, the effect. But if you remember the early trailers, they were not trying to show you the gimmick in the trailers. It looked like Sam Mendes was making a war film. And
I
it was
really
gonna be great.
wish I'd gone in not knowing about the one take thing,
Yeah,
because
me too.
for the first 15 minutes I was really distracted and looking for the transitions, because I'm a Roger Deakins fanboy. I'll say that out front, but the transitions are so slick, you're not going to find them. You'll see a couple, but as he said in an interview the other day on the red carpet, he saw a website once where they were guessing where the transitions were, and they got one of them right.
Yeah, and I have, I have some film friends, some techie friends who I was talking to about this movie, and they were like, I saw one of the transitions, and it totally just pulled me out of it. And I was like, shut up.
Yeah.
Shut up.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
You saw a transition. Good for you. Never see a movie again.
Yeah.
You're done. You've peaked.
Completely disagree with that.
It really felt like theater in a way, where they just the placement of bodies mattered so much. So in the first part, you had can I just call him Tom and Baratheon?
First of all, I forgot that was him until after the fact.
They didn't know.
We'll
Sam
check
Mendes,
with legal later whether you can do that.
See, I just assumed all Brits watched all British things. So Sam Mendes had never seen Game of Thrones. He had no idea. He got a tape of him recording in his kitchen.
So
or
it's Dean
something.
Charles Chapman we're talking about, right?
Thank you. Yeah. So anyway, he was heavily featured early on because he had the personal connection, and that his brother would be directly impacted by the attack that was imminent, that was coming.
Yeah, let's just we are going to be having a spoiler-filled conversation, so tune off right now. If you do not want to hear anything, we're going to be talking about everything. Do not listen to this podcast if you want to see these movies without them being ruined first. Continue.
So the two boys basically have to cross enemy lines to inform their other British battalion that they're walking into a trap. Otherwise, everybody's going to get massacred. And it just so happens that Tom and Baratheon's brother he's going to die if he doesn't do this, right? So in just the way that they film those opening sequences, because it's only one shot and they can't do cutaways to their close-ups or anything, he was usually in the front of the camera and the other actor was in the background, because basically he had more to lose from the situation. And then basically it was like a tit-a-tat of who would become closer to the camera, who was in more of like a power position, so to speak. And then you get Hot Priest steps in there.
If I'm not wrong, they rehearsed that for like 6 months.
6 months, yeah. All just the specificity of it, because it's like, it's all about the reaction shot in film, right? So if somebody says something that's informing the other person's reaction shot, but they're in the background of a camera, they have to rethink the entire shot and how they got there in the first place. And long story short, you don't think about this when you're seeing the movie. It just seems to be so natural that all like the technical like specificity of who goes where and all the rehearsal, it just evaporated in clean air. And I just felt like I was in the trench. I feel like I was in no man's land. That bunker sequence when they go in the bunker. I mean, like I
Colin Firth when they get the first time.
when it's just the two of them in the abandoned German bunker.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I was watching for the transitions for about 15 minutes, and after that, they had me.
Yeah, same.
They had me good and proper.
Well, you're right. Sam Mendes said they got on that field, and first thing they did, he had both of them, the actors, him and Roger, and AD and stuff. And it was just a small little skeleton crew, and they were literally, first it was just him and Roger, and him and his assistant director, literally just walking around this field with the script, just trying to walk through what he wrote, and then they built trenches as he was laying down flags. So they rehearsed it for months without anything being built. It was just flags set up just to create the stage on that field. So yeah, I feel like it was one of those examples.
The cynic guys that turn up and you just see 750 feet of flags. It's like, should have called
Damn
out.
it! Yeah,
But it's cool. It adds this element that thankfully they did a lot of the gimmick before they went into no man's land and before they went beyond enemy lines, but you see every single footstep they make. So the stakes are really high the whole way. Because usually with film, when they cut to something, it's because they want you to see it. So as an audience member, it's like, okay, the director's telling me this. Like, how many times are people like, oh, I think those two characters are in love? And it's like, is it because of the close-up of them smiling, like that the director threw in my face? Of course they're going to fall in love. Whereas with this, because you see everything happening, it's basically fair play that any situation could happen. And I think that just adds this crazy element of stress for the viewer that I think worked really effectively.
I mean, also, like, one takes aside, there are certain shots, for instance, when he reaches the end and he's standing there in the trench, and the camera pivots around and the guy in the background shouting at him, and he realizes what he's got to do, which is get out of that trench in full view of the enemy and run for it. And, like, it's a moment there where you see him decide to do it. And that's a director and a cinematographer and an actor all working together perfectly. Like that's a magic moment. There's like a couple of those ever, like, when you see that on screen, and it's just beautiful. Yeah,
and the times they leave the actors to show other things, and then how are they going to get back to the actors? These were masters involved with this film. I know there's a lot of Parasite versus that. Like, it always becomes competitive and combative. Great. It always becomes combative in that way. But these were masters working on both of these movies, and specifically to 1917. Like, all of these things literally just vanished, and the story became the thing, not the fact that it's a war movie, not the fact that it's like, yes, good versus evil. And it's like, just this story was so captivating.
That's like the best piece of advice for someone who says, I don't like war films. It's like, well, the war is there, but they very cleverly put the war in the background. Like, the war is happening over here, and occasionally the war intrudes, and when it does, sure, war is hell, and it really like trumpets that, but most of the time it's about the journey.
Do you think that this film did well using that gimmick because so much of our generation, maybe the generation before us, certainly the one below us, is so used to playing open world first person games that it felt kind of like you would feel walking behind someone in a video game?
Maybe. It wasn't too POV for me, though.
Yeah.
It's not POV. It's that just like Red Dead or anything else where you're not in POV all the time. The default setting is that you're right behind them. The way they move their camera.
I think it certainly helped with the immersiveness of it. But there were so many other things. Like the cinematography was awesome. Everything was staged beautifully. They did some fantastic stuff with lighting, but the sound mixing as well really messed with your head, because what I noticed was all of the dialogue was mixed at a certain level, but every single gunshot was mixed about 5 times higher than that. So that by the third time a gunshot came out of nowhere, you had as much anxiety as the guy who's crawling through the field. You're waiting for the gunshot, which is what you'd be doing if you're out there. It was like sound, vision, everything came together. In one nice, really cohesive product.
I've never used VR of any kind, but seeing this film in IMAX when the plane crash happens, which if you've seen that movie, they've actually kind of spoiled it in a lot of trailers since, but a plane is sort of crashing towards them and they have to run to get out of the way. That has to be what VR feels like, especially with the sound coming at me in all these different directions of the plane getting louder. I mean, it was terrifying. It was awesome. Yeah. And they can't cut away. They can't just like save the audience by showing like, oh, where's the escape plan going to be? It's like I'm staring at the plane crashing towards me. It was so wild.
So what were your favorite, if you could maybe pick one or two, your favorite sequences in the movie?
The last scene. I mean, it's so personal in that last scene.
Literally the very last one when he finally finds his brother. Just that tiny little moment. That last scene. So after he's walked through the medical tent and everything.
Yeah, and that's theater too, because that is a dialogue scene where two people are talking to each other, and it's like, whose reaction shot are you going to get? And they just left our, I guess you can call him our main character alone, and you almost didn't even see this guy even following the whole time. You almost didn't see his face while he's talking to the brother.
Yeah, the scene literally depended on that guy's performance.
So, little side note, Sam wrote a different ending apparently, and he was afraid to. Actually, no, I lied to you. He wrote that ending. And then he second guessed it when they were actually walking in through and staging it. He wasn't going to have the medical tent. He wasn't going to put the audience through another horrific truth of what this guy had to go to before he got to him. And then I can't remember if he filmed it or not, but they realized it's just not working. So they went in there. He asked his writer, Chrissy, what's her name, to write about 20, Chrissy, something, can't remember, something about 20 lines of dialogue or whatever, just the things that people could say in the medical tent. And then he got there that day, and he had the AD set them up, and he said, tell them to just go full out. I want it to just be full-on trauma. We'll move the camera a little bit. We'll use it if we decide to use it. Yeah. By the time they arrived... That was pretty
damn confronting.
Yeah. So he gets past the medical tent, and apparently there is a cut there. And when he swoops back, and he goes back with George McKay's character, to find the brother, that is a different take. And it's that take from there to the end. That was the first take. The scene they have together is the very first time they filmed it. And then he walks to the tree and it's over. So, the intimacy, I did feel like it was...
Kudos to him. That was a great take.
Yeah, it was a good take. And I feel like it grounded it because, I mean, this obviously... I feel like one of the paradoxes of this film was that it was extremely... For them having such an intense desire to make it immersive and realistic, like true realism.
For those of you listening on headphones, that was Jeff trying to sneakily open a beer.
Yeah. You can drink for fun.
I haven't been negative yet at all.
You can drink for fun. I feel like it came off incredibly cinematic in spite of that.
Oh yeah.
And that's not a negative thing at all. It's a beautiful thing. So I thought this scene at the end, especially maybe the fact that it's the first take, maybe it's the way it was directed, however those guys played it, it felt so not cinematic. It felt almost like voyeuristic. So like we were there just looking at
right to the very last scene in the movie.
Yeah, it follows into the tree. The
last scene in the movie is like one of my favorites.
So do you like the book ending? Is that one of your favorite parts?
I like the tree, yeah.
Because he wakes up in a similar tree, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, Sam told a story on the director's symposium, the round table at the DGA, when he said we were just scouting and we found that tree, and I had written a different beginning and different ending. We weren't sure how we knew we kind of wanted it to feel like a similar beginning and similar end. And that was just one of those times where I just found that tree and I went and set up underneath it and I just looked at Roger and he was like, yep. And he was like, this is going to be it.
Yep.
This is going to be it. We're going to find it.
Yeah. Any other favorites? David, did you have a different favorite scene?
I mean, my favorite scene was when he was standing at the edge of the trench about to go over.
Oh my, yeah, for sure.
Like, and just the
so
like you've got a guy screaming at him from behind. He's got this resolution. Like you see his decision.
Yeah.
Like I might die, but I'm going to do it.
And they did such a good job on that actor too, because he goes through a lot, and
yes.
And then it's basically 5-10 minutes before that. He was so ashen that you thought he was going to die leaning up against a different tree, I guess, in that little circle before the little battalion went to
the guys are singing.
Yeah, when he says, I'm trying to meet the Devons, and they're like, we are the Devons. And that's when another realization, he realizes, holy shit, I made it, but I'm not done yet. I'm 99%.
I mean,
It's like when you're 99% loaded and you can't get that extra percent and you want to throw your computer out the window. It's like, damn it.
Yeah, can you take this message?
That whole getting up to that battalion with that guy singing. I mean, he's talked a lot about. Sam has spoken a lot about how we were trying to use the imagery of crossing the river Styx back to the land of the life. So coming from the land of the dead, that crazy sequence in the middle of the night with the church burning and everything. Going back in the river, crawling over dead bodies and actually getting there. The ominous tone when he walks up and you're not quite sure, they're singing in English. So it does make you feel good, but it doesn't sound happy. And they're just sitting there and it's just so strange, the tone. And it's weird how nobody acknowledges him for so long. There is a soldier walking up on a group of soldiers and no one even says anything to him. Again, it was one of those times where I was like, this is appropriately not realistic. It worked somehow, because I feel like in a truly realistic, maybe handheld kind of feeling, somebody would have come up to him and been like, "Soldier, what are you doing?" For some reason, it just made sense that he was still completely isolated. You know what I mean?
I think we've praised this movie a lot.
Let me talk about it real fast. My favorite scene in the movie was with him and the girl with the baby.
Yeah.
I just felt like, I'm not gonna lie, it was in there for a good reason. I was getting kind of tired of what was happening. It was still effective, but I kind of felt, and I'll drink if I need to, I kind of, up until that point, I kind of started feeling like, I kind of feel like the video game thing, like we're just going from one disaster to the next, and we're just staying with him to see how he solves the next problem. And other than he had a strong emotional response when the other guy died. I mean, that was a really powerful moment. I really did enjoy that. But outside of that, I did feel like it was just an obstacle and another obstacle and another obstacle. And then we got to that scene in the basement with her. And it was just so grounded and emotional. And it was the first time, and maybe the only time of the film, I felt like he remembered his humanity. Mm-hmm. It wasn't when he had to deliver the scene at the very end, even when he's looking at the picture. That's still very powerful in another way, but it's kind of like that was tethered to the man he was before he entered the war. The picture of her.
Also, it was like the 1917 chill out room. Mm-hmm. Like you needed a break.
You needed a break. Yeah, we needed a break. Yeah, exactly.
And
we needed it too.
Sight. I mean, she was like, back to Parasite, where they talk about like the cockroaches spreading when the lights come on. Like she was in the middle of this German town, and nobody even looked for her. Nobody found her.
Yeah.
And then he was basically hiding in plain sight in a way.
And it was just one of those clear moments that, you know, when more movies handle these correctly. Good job, Dave. Dave just spilled his beer all over the place. Good job. It's one of those great moments in war movies when you remember what the war is being fought for.
Yeah.
There's a woman with a baby that has absolutely no one. And she's completely alone because of that war. The war had decimated the entire town, her entire life. Who knows if that kid is going to live, even if it does have that milk. Mm. And it was just such a grounding moment. It gave us a physical breather, and emotionally it reminded us that this is not an action movie. Yeah. There are consequences to what's happening.
I literally heard people in the audience next to me go, "Oh, he's got milk."
Yeah,
like,
yeah. He did have milk.
Yeah.
All right. So I think we're going to transition to the other movie, but it is... I kind of want to wrap up with this by saying it's great that to like the war film skeptics, it's not about, oh yeah, we love war, because it proves how, I don't know, masculine humanity is or something like that. Because these heroes in World War I and World War II that we constantly go do for war films, almost, you know, decades and decades later, there's going to be a new World War II movie next year. These people didn't want to be there. They weren't conquerors. They literally wanted the war to end so they could leave and go home. And so it's funny because as far as relevancy is concerned, while 1917 had that like humanity and like, why do we do this thing? Like, why do we fight? The film that we are going to compare 1917 to is Paths of Glory, which is another World War I film by Stanley Kubrick, director.
Didn't know it was a Kubrick film. Good on you, John, for sneaking one of those in.
Yeah, 1957. And this is actually good timing for us because it stars Kirk Douglas, who just passed away right before the Oscar ceremony recently.
He had a really good run. That's like that. You can lay down.
Understatement of the century, dude.
You have done some work, so you can lay down happy.
I mean, good lord.
But this is
legend.
You know, we all want to like leave our mark in the world and say we accomplished something, and yeah, no, he's good.
We'll give Kirk a lot of shout outs for this, except for the fact that he almost bankrupted the movie with his salary being so high. So fuck, I got a drink. Damn it. Wait, okay, but to people who haven't seen this movie and they're wondering why we're comparing it to a movie from 1957, this is a World War I movie where pretty quickly they also do basically the same thing where they're in the trenches and they have to cross no man's land, except a lot of these soldiers are given an impossible task, so they don't.
Apparently World War I was only fought around this one battlefield called no man's land.
It was it moved, right. But it was there all the time.
But yeah, so the men don't attack because it's an unwinnable battle. They lose... They have no guidance, basically. They don't know what they're doing. They're trying to take an anthill over no man's land, like while enemy fire is raining down on them. And eventually they end up getting tried for war crimes, for cowardice. And the penalty for cowardice was death. So I think this is actually like a more socially relevant film to 2020 in a way than 1917 was. So it's just a really funny thing that it wasn't just that it was another World War I movie. It's almost like, holy shit, this movie really comes alive in today's light, especially after seeing 1917.
Why do you feel that way specifically?
I mean, I don't want to get like
because of the trial.
Yeah, I don't want to get too political, but how funny is it? These are soldiers. These are people that have actually risked their lives. Some of whom had war battles already, had fought in war battles and had injuries. And because they didn't attack, they were being... like they were going to go under a trial to see if they were going to be executed for cowardice. Like, just think about what would it be like to assassinate, which I guess is kind of like what you would be. It's not. I guess it's not technically an assassination, but to kill a soldier because they were cowards. It's like it's just a complete spin on the whole war genre. Like, you think this is like good versus evil and the strongest survives, and it's like, well, we won the war. We won the war in World War One, and here we are killing our own men because this one particular battle they got really scared and nervous and they didn't attack when they were told to attack.
I mean, technically they were the French. They just had American accents.
Is that really what it was? Well, it's confusing.
They were French.
I thought they were actually supposed to be British, but like fighting on French lines.
No, they're French.
Oh, fuck.
Remember all those French names? All the colonels with French names.
They didn't even have British accents. This time period for movies.
That was straight up American production.
Cannot do as a French accent. So we just went, nope, stick with what you got, buddy. We're good.
I mean, yeah, this movie is just about the absurdity of war. Like, yeah, somebody's going to die in this war, whether we kill them ourselves because they don't do something correctly. One of the first lines in this movie, there's a great little voiceover that introduces the situation about from 1914 to 1916, how when the French had started the war and how the Germans had basically taken back some of the ground. So right across one of the major rivers, the anthill was set up, which is connected to no man's land, and the French were still trying to defend it. No one had moved in months and months and months. And the first dialogue is basically the one of the main generals comes to see another general who's right underneath him, and he says, "Wonderful to see you." And they sit there talking very happily about how nice it is to be seeing each other. There are all these great lines of dialogue throughout the film that just kind of so clearly comment on the absurdity of they are in the middle of war, but these guys are actually getting to do their jobs in the midst of it. And I think it ends up creating this whole interesting level of commentary on, from the top down, are they actually on the sides of their soldiers? Right. Or are they more concerned about coming off well
They really established distance between the general, I think it was, and the men when he's walking down like the trenches. And can I just say, I'm wondering, did 1917 and this film, like did 1917... production design team reference this film, because those trenches...
No, they did. Like, so this had the record for the longest continuous shot.
In all of history?
At the time, yeah. That first scene through the trench, they don't cut for well over a minute, and that was that was unheard of then.
Okay.
Yeah, when he is walking through saying hello to the soldiers.
Yeah, ready to kill some Germans.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's the point I was making. That's the only thing he has to ask them. He has nothing in common with these men.
Yeah.
Like, and it clearly establishes him as someone who is not qualified to lead these people and is going to be a problem in the movie. It's a great storyline.
And he gives this great little speech at the beginning of the movie where the general or whoever is ahead of him is telling me he's going to have to get his people to go down there and take the anthill. And he gives this huge speech about how more than any promotion, more than anything else, I care about my men. That I'm not going to do something terrible. They're the only thing I care about. And the other general is like, okay, well then I'll just go tell them you feel that way. And he's like, no, but we can do it. If we have to do it, then we'll do it. And he's like so clearly like setting up for that. It cuts almost pretty soon after that immediately to the sequence where he is walking through saying this. I love the way they film this because the camera is, unlike 1917, it is in front of him. So we are walking in front of him, watching him perform in front of these soldiers. He is almost performing as he's walking through and saying, you ready to kill German soldiers? And if we stay with him for quite a while, he has a couple sequences. He walks through a bad place where we see injured people. That doesn't deter him. He just keeps walking. And he finally comes up to this one guy who's like looking really sad, does his usual spiel. How are you, soldier, ready to kill Germans? And the guy is clearly just broken. And some of the dudes some of the dudes next to him say, sorry, sir, he's shell-shocked. And he says, there's no such thing as shell-shocked.
Yeah.
And he immediately starts fighting with this guy, and it builds to him. He builds to him slapping him and walking away. And what I love what happens is after that, after they cross in front of the camera. And now we are finally behind him. The performance is over. He's lost control. Yeah. He's realized.
And also in that one sequence, if you needed a clear delineation of who the bad guy's about to be, that pretty much established it.
Yeah, and the whole thing was very political. Like, he was walking by, they even looked like political videos. He had a stump speech, he was shaking hands, and it's very similar to traumatic brain injury is really just a strong headache, right? It's like to get a little political. So anyway, these things just kind of come up, because then later the same general is basically at a ball, basically at like a dance, where they're putting on like a big show to celebrate their war victories, when the people that are actually doing the work are the ones who are getting shell shock and the ones who are actually like literally living in a trench. So yeah.
I think let's just talk about Kirk in this movie really quickly. So the American thing.
He was a shining light in this movie.
I mean, he championed this movie. He was the one who got this made. He fought for it. I think he optioned the book. He personally begged them to hire Stanley Kubrick. 57. Yeah. So when was Spartacus?
Spartacus was 60.
Yeah.
It was right after this.
So I think Stanley got Spartacus because they had done this together.
Because a different director was signed on to do Spartacus.
Yeah, this was a passion project for Kirk Douglas, and you kind of understand how it got to that point. The case itself, just trying to prove the absurdity of the charges brought against them, is just basically so that they can defend the fact that somebody was going to be held accountable for the failure of not attacking.
Well, and they said, oh my God, there's some good lines. One of them is something along the lines of, nothing inspires the troops more than a good death or something.
Yes.
So it has nothing to do with this battalion. It's the whole army. If they find out that people are executed for cowardice, they think the rest of the army will be more courageous. When they die at the end, when there's the execution at the end, they actually say, your men died very well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We truly couldn't have asked for anything better. The men died well.
So so one thing that's important is that the general orders a firing. He wants to fire. I forget what this type of missiles are, but they're basically like what we would consider like rocket launchers today.
Mortars.
But because the men were cowardly, they hadn't advanced to the right spot yet. So the mortars would have landed on the men. So. But the timing was right, so the generals had fired anyway, and they said, "Well, we'd have to be firing on our own people." And the general says, well, they're scum, Colonel. He says that about the soldiers, his own soldiers, who he's later going to execute.
Did you miss the point where he specifically targeted them?
Yeah. It wasn't they were in the wrong spot.
Yeah.
They were still in the trench. He said,
target the trench.
Look, I can't be wrong
the
about
trenches.
2 things in this movie, all right?
I mean, did you watch this movie?
But I don't know, though, because he said those coordinates off the top of his head. There's no way this general knew that they were at those coordinates.
The captain said that. The one who initially refused the order, who had to call and tell them where to put the coordinates. The general just said, make them fire on our own troops.
I mean, I must admit, I almost skimmed this movie when they started walking around pot plants for no reason in the office, but I stuck with it, and I'm glad I did, because it settles into a really, really great story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What were your favorite scenes in this movie? Favorite scene or sequence?
Mine's probably one that doesn't exist.
The blackmail
American
scene.
soldiers.
The which one?
The blackmail scene.
Oh, yeah, that was oh, God, yeah, it was fantastic.
It's like, are you blackmailing me?
His speech.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah, Kirk Douglas in that scene is just it's just an animal. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, just the shame of it. The opening line in his very first statement in the trial. There are certain times that I am ashamed to be a human being, and this is one of those times. This whole trial is one of those times.
Ashamed to be a member of the human race.
Yeah, I mean, just going for it. Part of me wonders, like, could you actually get away with saying things like that in a court martial? But again, like it just didn't matter. The theme of it was just so much more powerful. My favorite scene in this movie, without a doubt, is the scene at the end of the bar where she comes out and sings the song.
Oh my God!
Yeah. And they all just become so quiet.
I didn't get that at first, but then it was a thing where I was like, I don't know what purpose this serves, but as it goes on, you realize, and it's a really slow burn, as Kubrick likes to do.
Mm-hmm.
It turns absurdist for sure.
Yeah.
The whole.
But it does get the point across in the end.
Mine's the actual no man's land attack, when Kirk Douglas realizes that everybody hasn't marched forward, so he has to go back through no man's land. And also filming it, we're talking about 1917, and they used a lot of special effects. I have no idea how they pulled this off, the filmmaking of this movie. And this
the sound design,
dude. Definitely the sound design.
I mean, I'm going to... One thing about the sound. Did you hear the stormtrooper blasters in there?
Mm-hmm.
Because
let's talk about some of the sound effects.
I'm like, there's stormtrooper. No wonder no one can hit anyone.
The sound effects for bullets, the sound effects for the punches were incredible.
Yeah.
they were like, I just don't know what makes that noise, but it worked. But yeah, I mean, every now and then in that the major tracking shot we're talking about that follows the first wave that Kirk is in the front of as they're moving across no man's land, you see explosions in the background. They are intermittent, so they are not overwhelmed with tons and tons and tons of visual effects in the background. The ones that are there are perfect because there is tons of incredible sound design in between them. The bullets flying and the drone that was in the background, they kind of like, I guess it was the bombs coming in or like taking off and coming in. It was just so effective.
I mean, you wanted that to be incessant, obviously. So
yeah,
like it's a literal bombardment to your senses.
It worked. Again, it was like not, I don't know if they were trying to go for like absolute realism, but I felt like it created a lot of tension. And you actually thought everyone was just dying around him. I don't know. It's just crazy.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good time to wrap these two up. So yeah, if you love 1917, you should definitely give Paths of Glory a shot, especially since Kirk Douglas just passed. I think this is good timing. A lot of people refer to Spartacus for Kirk Douglas, but this movie carried a lot of weight. Also, kind of relevant, it wasn't really nominated for a lot as far as, it didn't do well at the box office. It's just one of those movies that stuck with people and really gained a lot of traction over time, which I think is, a testament to it.
This movie is a tight hour and 28 minutes. Just go in and grab it, get in there.
And they're in no man's land in like 10 minutes. Like they immediately, that first, like they're out there. They don't waste any time.
Even if you think you're not enjoying it, give it about 20 minutes because it changes completely on its head in the first 20 minutes.
Also find out when they fired a major actor in the middle of the shoot and they try to like hide him as if he's not there. One of the three guys in the trial was fired before the end of the movie. So there were all these scenes with the other two guys and then like an extra in the background.
Do we know what he was fired for?
He was a pain in the ass on set. He was yelling, cursing, and it was actually Kirk Douglas. He was
they used to fire you for that?
Yeah.
Wow.
He said, because Kubrick did like 60 takes for all of these scenes, and he was so sick of it. And also like overages, they're like, if you keep him at this point, that you have to pay him for an extra day. And you think Kubrick gave a fuck about that. So yeah, they fired an actor. So there's a whole priest scene, and he's in the background mumbling, but they actually took old audio of him, and that
Is
person
this the guy
like
that
mumbling.
ends up with a head injury?
He's
like, is that how they got around it? They just
It's gotta be.
He's the guy.
He's
He's
the
the guy
smallest
that
character.
looks like he's actually in the Vietnam War. Like he doesn't seem like he's in that war. Also, definitely not French. I don't feel bad about that at all.
Yeah,
he was like the guy with like the beard and facial hair, and he's getting
the main guy, the one you see
He's
the
like
most.
the main one out of the three. Yeah,
He's one of the two that goes on the night patrol that the other guy gets killed.
Rewatch the priest scene.
Wow.
Rewatch the priest scene. There's all these scenes with the priest and the other two guys, and he's in the background, literally just like mumbling to himself because they used old audio.
I love that line. I loved his line when they came to get them for the execution when he's talking to the sergeant and he's just sitting there looking him in the eye and he says, isn't it funny I haven't had a sexual thought since the sentence, and then he just drops.
Yeah.
And he just like completely breaks in half.
I mean, my legs go when I don't have sexual thoughts for long periods of time as well. So
I mean, I can't feel my legs just sitting here with you
That's
guys.
a drink. That's a drink.
And real quick shout out, Stanley Kubrick met his wife on this film.
She was the only woman on set.
She plays the woman who sings the song at the end. Didn't act much after that, but they stayed married until he passed away, so that's pretty cool.
that's a great story.
Yeah, good for Stanley. Paths of Glory, go watch it.
All right, we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about Little Women.
Round two.
We're still going.
Great. Hi, everybody. We are back, and we are going to talk about our next film, which is Little Women.
Little Women.
All hail Greta Gerwig.
Oh, hail fucking Greta Gerwig.
What a shame she did not get a Best Director nomination.
Right off the bat.
That is
Right off the bat.
crazy to me that she did not get a Best Director nomination.
It was a very well-crafted film.
I mean, and I understand that the only point they could possibly make is that she wrote all of those amazing cuts and edits into the screenplay. Mm-hmm. So I guess the weakest argument you could possibly make is that, look, that was more of a writing choice than a directorial choice, but give me a break. The execution of that is still so...
If you write and direct, it's both.
Yes, you're auteuring. Like, you have to give
still
it up.
counts.
Not to mention it always bothers me. Like, it's starting to happen more and more where we kind of have splits with nominations. How can you possibly have a Best Picture nominated film, a Best Screenplay, and not have the best director when it's the same human being that did it. It's just crazy.
You know what? Here, this is what it's not.
I mean,
just.
if
It's
they
not just
if they botched the cinematography,
Yeah, but maybe.
It's not just age, it's not just race, although those things are highly included. I think even the Academy, when it comes down to it, they're just star fuckers. And so to them, it wasn't so much like, oh, we like white men. They want to star fuck Quentin Tarantino, they want to star fuck Martin Scorsese, and they want to star fuck Sam Mendes.
I mean, I can tell you, I saw I went down the rabbit hole for a while with the Marvel thing. I was watching all Marvel films, all sci-fi films, all that, and I really got limited in my choice for movies. This is not a movie I would have chosen to watch normally, but I certainly would now.
Nice.
It has great rewatchability, for sure.
So what do we love about it? What are our favorite?
I enjoyed that way more than I was expecting to. It was
What'd you
just a
love?
really great adaptation.
What jumped out to you?
The pacing, the way it jumped around a lot. It you were in different time periods, and it kept you kept your attention. It kept your attention. I love the lighting everywhere. They used as much of the environment as possible.
It really felt like Massachusetts.
Yeah, at night you've got single source lighting. During the daytime you've got the windows, and they really used the environment, and it felt 100% natural. So you didn't even think about it.
Yeah, I think I read this thing somewhere because I remember when I walked out, I noticed the costumes, and in the theater I remember thinking, it felt a little like theater to me, like I was seeing costumes. And then I read a little bit, and apparently Greta was very passionate because at that time in history, it actually was becoming really popular for clothes to be dyed. So there was all this brilliant color that was being introduced into fabrics. And a lot of times when you see historical pieces from that time period, they tend to drab down color tones with lighting and the costumes. It makes you feel like, oh, things just weren't as alive back then. But she was just like, no, fuck that. Life is just exploding everywhere. I don't know. It really made sense to me. And not to mention all the acting. All the acting was just really, really, really good.
There was
great.
not a performance you didn't enjoy in that whole movie.
Yeah, it really was a good ensemble. I mean, you were rooting for all of them, and they all had their own dynamics.
I really, really enjoyed Saoirse Ronan. I'm saying that right?
I love her, dude.
Every time her and Laura Dern were in the same room, because they're both high level actresses, and they're both comfortable with sitting back and letting the other one have a moment. And you saw that interplay between them, when it was someone it was almost like a support structure, one for the other.
Yeah, it was like Saoirse had all the intelligence in the world, and Laura had all the wisdom that Saoirse wished she had. And so just the two of them coming from, they're both brilliant in their own way, but there's just so much fullness in every single scene. One thing that stayed with me a lot actually was, well, first of all, just the fact that I'm thinking about the movie every day after I see it is a sign that it's a good movie, right? I don't know how many other movies do that to somebody, but I want to see it again. I want to read the book. All those kinds of things come to play after seeing this movie, which proves that the movie's brilliant and yada, yada, yada. It should live on very well in the catalogs of film history. But the way they age, Timothée Chalamet is the one who didn't really age. I'm phrasing this incorrectly. I'm phrasing this in such a way that I'm going to have to take a drink. But he doesn't feel like he ages in the two time periods.
Yeah.
But it works so fucking well. I'm almost sitting here going, did Greta Gerwig do this intentionally or not? What
do you think? Why do you think?
I think No Stone Unturned. I think No Stone Unturned, but
Timothy Chalamet doesn't age. He's a vampire.
In every movie, The King.
He's 600 years old.
Yeah. But so when he's older and he's now hitting on the older women, I'm sitting there. I'm like, you know what? Maybe you shouldn't go for Laurie. I feel like he's got to grow up a little bit more. Even when he's proposing to Florence.
Did that work for you? Did you feel like that? I think everyone kind of felt that way. I couldn't tell if that was maybe one of the only indicative things that I felt about the movie. It was that it seemed the only way you could justify them doing that to him is to make the statement that Laurie doesn't actually grow up.
And I think I got that. And I think he was trying to go for emotional fullness.
But did it work
so maybe he
for
overplayed his hand early on. That he was a little too emotionally felt early on. He was a little too self-aware as that teenager. He possibly could have come in with a little bit more naivete and then been a little bit of a fish out of water, having to earn his way in. So if I was to give an acting critique, I would do that. But as far as how it plays in the future, it's great because it just shows you what these women are capable of doing. And why should he be a standard bearer in any way? In fact, why should he end up with any of them at all? And I think at the end, the one thing that I'm that makes me think that they definitely did all this intentionally is he just seems so grateful at the end of the film. Like he feels like the lucky one, regardless of the wealth, which, you know, wealth and class. Also, another comparison to Parasite, a film that stays with you. But back to Little Women, this classism of like, well, you have to marry well if you're a woman for now. Things should change in the future. Wink, wink. 2020. But it's great that at the end he really does, when he apologizes to Joe, and even when he sort of becomes it's Amy, right? Mm-hmm. Amy's husband. He's basically like he's just so grateful to be involved. You know, like he's not the Reach. They are.
I feel like the big controversy over his character with the book and with all the story versions of this is that there's like two camps, right? Team Laurie or Team Baird for the man that she is eventually going to choose to be with, and how they're going to work into these women's lives. I felt like I kind of like the way Greta handled this one, just because I felt from the very beginning, as soon as you have this, when they come over to his house at the beginning and they're like looking at his library and just kind of, and then he finally joins their little theater troupe. I felt like more than anything, out of he wanted out of his life, the only thing he may have been sure of is that he wanted to be in their lives.
Right.
So I'm not even sure. I felt in a beautiful way, I wasn't even sure if he actually loved Amy in a singular way, the way he felt like he loved Joe. But I think everything's going to be just fine because they're all going to be in each other's lives. They're all going to be working at that school or, you know, whatever.
Yeah. Well, and just how complex this whole story is just a testament. That's Greta. Like, the acting performances are brilliant, but Meryl Streep was in The Laundromat, which tanked this. You know, like, even Meryl Streep can be in a bad movie. Like, the complexity of this on the screen in the final product is Greta. Just being in her hands, I felt so taken care of. And I'm going to be thinking about this movie forever. And all of these themes, all of these things, like, I'm going to be unpacking for years.
Go for it.
Dialogue-wise, they don't write them like they used to.
Yeah.
Like, there are some immensely quotable lines. You type Little Women quotes into Google and like lists of 50 pop up. Do you have dialogue that stayed with you?
You know, it's
a leading
cliche.
question. It's a leading question because I have one.
It's cliche. Yeah, well, tell me yours first.
Well, there's the two that are getting out a lot.
Yeah,
which I'm assuming you're going to...
No, mine was just because my dreams are different from yours doesn't make them unimportant.
Oh, fuck yeah.
That was beautiful. All the downplayed moments between the girls. I think those ended up popping the most because the backbone of this story relies on the relationships between these girls and how as they spread their arms a little bit into the world, the core is still them. We're waiting for them to just come back and relate to each other. So whenever there were moments, that one is so good, but it's just the three of them, because Beth's gone at that point, I think, just walking together, and it's followed up by that amazing... Oh, no, that was when she was getting married, wasn't it? Excuse me. That was before... Hermione, what's her name?
Oh my god,
Emma Watson.
That's before she gets married. But
you're not typecast at all, Emma. It's fine.
Of course, the one at the end where they're walking together and about the writing, thought about writing the story about these three girls, and it's like, it's not writing that makes it, or writing about it does make it important.
Can I also say, when they were doing the theatre, and Emma Watson was playing an American doing a horrible British accent, golden moment.
Yeah, did we? Yeah, we're allowed to laugh, right? Yeah, it's pretty good about that.
Yeah,
no, that was a great moment for me.
Yeah, I thought that worked.
I laughed out loud.
Well, obviously the big line that Greta added at the end of Joe's monologue from the book, she added the line, "But I'm so lonely," at the end of Women Have, apparently that whole monologue is there except for that very last line, "But I'm so lonely." And I thought it was so good because
so good.
Sorry. Alcott was writing at a certain time, right? I mean, I think this is before the first wave of feminism, way before that. So she wasn't even allowed to talk about certain things. And that perspective, the reason I would imagine she didn't feel like she was even allowed to write a line that Greta, like the one that like Greta added at the end of that, but I'm so lonely, because she wasn't even in a place to actually be able to confront the conflict of women judging themselves for wanting one or the other.
And I mean, that
was just such a breath of fresh air.
That's the really genius part about like someone who does a really good adaptation. It's like you've taken the source material and you've added just a little something.
Yeah.
And you've updated it and made it relevant, and it really works. Mm-hmm. And that whole film for me really worked.
Did you have any favorite sequences or more lines or anything?
I mean, the Florence speech that was added, which apparently was Meryl Streep sort of added it via Greta Gerwig, which is the Marriage is an Economic Proposition, which is actually going to segue really well into our comparative movie for this category. Hint.
Nice segue.
But that whole sequence is great. But yeah, just the Saoirse line at the end, I'm so lonely. I mean, that makes... Because think about right now, like we go through this, we're in this time where it's basically like ambition versus fulfillment versus ambition. It's like, is it egomaniacal to say like, I want this for myself? And it's like, well, what about your partner? And it's like, well, that's ridiculous. That's so, don't bottle me up that I need to be with a specific partner. And just to hear just that, a line like that, just to be so refreshing where it's like, oh, like we all want to share everything. Like what's success if you don't share it? That's not an anti-feminist thing to think about. And so it's like, it's just such a weird issue for us societally right now. And to watch Jo go through it, through all the ups and downs that she goes through, like that line just solidifies like what her struggle is. And I just think it's so relatable. And it's
which line?
But I'm so lonely, really. Just that
Oh,
whole,
but
the
I'm so
whole
lonely,
line
yeah.
leading up to it. Also, that Laura Dern, back to my thing about like intelligence versus like wisdom for the two of them.
Which is like,
Laura
I'm
Dern,
always angry or I'm always sad that...
because she's the brilliant one, but she's always angry. And Laura Dern is the wise one who doesn't know everything, but she's always...
No, I'm saying, remember Joe asks her in that scene, she's like, how do you do it? She's like, I'm always angry. Laura admits that like, I'm not good at it.
Right. And we talk about Inside Out a lot, where you talk about like who's, you know, and when you age, it changes.
And how the grown-up female is sadness is in charge of her.
Yeah, not to
Not to make the perfect parallel.
Yeah, that's not. I don't mean to make a perfect parallel, but like, why does Laura Dern stay quiet throughout this whole monologue?
Mm-hmm.
If somebody was saying that around me, I would feel like I should say something, but just to let like Laura Dern just to have the wisdom to just let her say it, and fucking Greta letting us know that Laura's there the whole time, so we're kind of seeing it from her point of view, but also it's a choice. She's actually saying a lot by not saying anything, by letting Jo work through this. It's just it just stays with
Yeah,
it.
I got the impression she knew this moment was coming, and she's been waiting for it to get there.
As sadly, I think it was set up so well that it was one of those moments when I was watching a period piece where I was like, that has to be one of the worst moments of a mother's life, where she has to admit that to her daughters that, yes, your life is not going to be the dreams that you thought it was going to be when you were a kid, unless you're willing to sacrifice something amazingly prevalent in conformity in mainstream society. You can choose to abandon what is expected of you, but you will lose all of that. I don't know. I felt like before we move on, I just did want to like throw. What's her name? Who plays Amy? She got so much. Florence Pugh. You know, I loved it. I thought she got a lot of praise. Laura Dern obviously won.
Mm-hmm. For a different movie, yeah.
Saoirse, this movie would not have worked if somebody that talented was not in the main role. Jo is almost unlikable on the page. She is a tough role to play. She's an intense, unagreeable human being that doesn't have a lot of growth from other people. You're kind of just waiting for her to like get over yourself a little bit and try to be a little bit more open, and you can still do what you're doing and be just a little bit nicer about everything. And Greta clearly writes roles like this well. Saoirse played one in Lady Bird. I felt kind of the same way about her. It's just like, if you don't have an actor like that, it just doesn't work. And the sequence that hurt me the most was everyone is waiting for Beth to pass. You know, it's always going to be emotional, but the way she did that intercut of her coming down with her still being alive, and then cutting again back to her actually walking down and just seeing Laura there
the old
crying.
1-2 punch, I called it.
Yeah, and there's just them like crying, and then she just walks out. I don't know. I just felt like it was just one of those things where if you weren't completely on board with Joe's point of view, which is mostly the movie, this thing would have just fallen flat. It wouldn't have mattered how great the supporting performances were. If you didn't actually have a reason to fight with Joe, it wouldn't have mattered. And I just want to, Saoirse.
Is she the standard bearer now? Like the
I don't know, dude. She's like 26 years old, and she's been in like only Best Picture nominees, and like no one even talks about her for like nominations and stuff anymore, which is just crazy. Well, she's too good. She's the Gene Hackman of her age.
Gene Hackman, nice. I was thinking just obviously she gets the Meryl comparisons, and Meryl came out hot because Sophie's Choice is early in her career, but it's like every time she's in a movie, it's whether she's nominated or not doesn't matter, which I think is a great thing. But what we know is that she's going to be a standard bearer. She's going to do something that other people who are up for this role are going to go, what the fuck did she think about this? Like, how could she do this? And then people who thought they had this all figured out are going to watch her performance and go, no, I couldn't have possibly done that.
Yeah, so I'm very excited to watch the rest of her career. Every time I remember how young she actually is, it just makes me freak out that she's just been in these movies. They're so good.
I mean, that was my thing with Brooklyn, is I was like, she's better than both these guys.
Yeah,
not anti them.
She's
but
too
like,
good.
She's exactly.
I do not want her to win for Best Actor one day for some big screamy crazy diva role that attracts the Oscar baity kind of thing. She is just giving these amazing foundation performances, and she's just not getting the love. Anyway. Next movie we're going to be talking about, we thought it would be fun. We thought about, we tossed around some different ideas for things that could correlate to Little Women, if we should go sincere or not, and we went the other direction. So we are going to be talking about Pride and Prejudice and zombies.
And zombies.
Yeah, I'm ready to I'm ready to rock because I love this movie, but I want you to go first.
I was like, when they suggested this, I was like, are you fucking serious?
Yeah.
Like, we're going to put these two. I do now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, it was, yeah.
They're sisters in that movie, right?
I mean, it's almost like when you go and see Hot Tub Time Machine. It's like you know exactly what you're going to get.
Okay.
In this case, you don't. It's way better than you would ever expect. Like, it's a serious adaptation. They bust out Pride and Prejudice dialogue in the middle of a zombie outbreak. Like, it's set up. It's legit. The storyline is well thought out. Like, I don't know where this stuff came from, but it's great. I didn't take many notes on this. I just sat back and enjoyed it.
It's fucking brilliant. And so I really didn't expect us to get into an Academy Awards thing with Greta Gerwig that would last 10 minutes. But to anybody that is anti the Academy Awards because they didn't nominate Greta Gerwig, go say fuck you to the Academy Awards and watch this movie. It's an adaptation of a book, 2009. This is actually a book called Pride and Prejudice and Zombies.
There's a whole series of them.
And the entire thing is basically taking Little Women and then sticking your fucking middle finger up to the Academy while you perform. I wrote down some quotes. Are you ready? Okay. With his income, Lydia, you'd think him handsome if he had half a zombie face. Okay, here we go. I consider dancing to be the first refinement of polished society. Don't you agree, Mr. Darcy? No, every savage can dance. I imagine even zombies could do it to some degree of success.
We should point out that Mr. Darcy is a ruthless zombie killer.
Oh, he's
in
fucking
this
awesome.
film.
Wait. This is my favorite line. Zombies are no zombies. All women must think of marriage, Lizzie. and then this is the crux of it. So Pride and Prejudice. So Elizabeth Bennet, played by Lily James,
from
she
Downton
gets
Abbey,
proposed to by Mr. Collins, who's played by Matt Smith,
who I will never look at the same again.
Right. He's so funny. So Mr. Collins proposes to him. Oh, by the way, all the girls are warrior queens. They're all trained in martial arts.
I don't want to take away from the sister element, but Matt Smith was a highlight in this film. His character is amazing.
Essential.
But just think about this. Elizabeth Bennet gets proposed to by Mr. Collins, who's Matt Smith. Let's be real. He's a very attractive man. He's a handsome gentleman. And Matt Smith, in his proposal, says that she would have to give up her warrior skills for the marriage. Oh my God, I lost the word. The marriage, commitment or something. And basically, she's like, go fuck yourself. I'm gonna go kill some fucking zombies, you dick. It is so great. This is the perfect time to watch this movie after seeing Little Women get snubbed. Fuck it. It's so good. It's so fun. And it's legitimately adapted from a book. So it's not like people just hacked away at a script. It actually makes sense. The whole thing checks out.
There's a scene in the middle where that a lot of inner snippets from the book are there, where Darcy finally comes to one of the country cottages that Matt Smith's family has, that they're staying there, and he comes to actually confess to her that he does have feelings for her, and they have this enormous fight in between the lines of dialogue that is building all this great sexual tension, and they're actually fighting the shit out of each other.
All these girls did their own stunts too, by the way.
I mean, it looks like it.
They trained for weeks and months and did their own stunts.
Honestly, it made me, even that first one where they're getting dressed and those
knives
shots of putting the knives in their thing. It made me think of that line from Wonder Woman where she's trying on dresses and she's like, "How do you fight? How do you fight in these dresses?" I'm like, this is how.
Yeah.
This one, I don't know if they were altered differently. There's a bunch of high slits and stuff for that kicks. But, man, they really brought it.
Oh, it's so good. And Charles Dance, who was Tywin Lannister, a.k.a. the senior Lannister, he plays her dad. He plays Mr. Bennet, I guess.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And he says this fun thing where they find out that she turned down the proposal. And he basically is like, I'm happy for you.
No, the mother was like, If you turn him down, I'll never speak to you again. The father was like, if you accept, I'll never speak to you again.
Yeah, so it's a nice father-son moment. Yeah. But then she runs out in the woods, and he goes, I forbid you to run out into the woods. So even as he gives her that, like, I'm so happy you turned down the proposal, he's like, I'm your father, come back here, miss. And she's like, fuck you, I'm a zombie killer. I don't have to listen to you. Yeah. All my Buffy fans, where you at? Like, go see this fucking movie. It is so fun. Fuck IMDb, by the way. Why does this have such a low score? This movie is so good.
Natalie Portman originally had the lead in this.
Natalie Portman, who showed up to the Oscars with a stitched-in name for every female director who was not nominated this year. Oh, the Farewell. Oh. Yeah, it was like a Dior dress because she's sponsored, and then she made them stitch in Greta Gerwig. Yeah. She had a full cape. She produced this movie, so this is
she was originally cast the lead, but schedule conflicts, she had to drop out. But I mean, Natalie Portman's just having so much fun now. Like, I can imagine her doing it. Can you imagine
just showing up to set and seeing Lily Collins get proposed to?
Lily James.
And damn it. Lily Collins. Shout out to Phil Collins' daughter. Lily James is just beating the shit out of the guy who just proposed to her. Like, Natalie Portman's like, fuck yeah, I like where movies are headed right now.
Yeah. The other thing I really, really loved was that every single person in this movie who is meant to be like a Pride and Prejudice character takes it totally deadpan seriously.
Oh, 100%.
Like, they are telegraphing the joke here. It's like, we're going to be 100% committed to the bit. And also, there's zombies.
Yeah,
it's so good.
Especially the... what's his name? Who plays Darcy? He's
God, he
I don't
really.
think this movie would have worked.
No,
if it was just these awesome sisters doing a bunch of stuff. If you didn't actually buy the thing that she wrote this whole book for, was trying to comment. I mean, this is super progressive. Like, she's not writing. Another less brave author would have written Jane's story. The more attractive sister who falls for the very nice man. It's a shame they can't be together because he's feeling pressured to go be with someone else. That's what most people would have written for their protagonist. No, we get to see, like, the underbelly. It's kind of self-destructive, which I think is interesting. I mean, they still pull it off.
He's attracted to her because of how she kills zombies. Like, that's cool, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. When he's given that scene of when she's like, and what do you think of an accomplished woman? What is an accomplished woman? Remember, he's talking around the cocktail table or the card table, and he's like, "Well, I've only known 6, and they have to be master warriors. They have to speak multiple languages. You have to do this." Oh man, it's just
so cool.
So they still fit.
It sounds like a dating list I saw on Tinder.
How do they make you work that?
Yeah. Anyway, let's wrap it up. Any favorite standout scenes or lines or moments or anything? I said
anything Matt Smith said in that movie.
I mean, everything out of his mouth was quite hilarious.
But to be fair to the ladies, the reason it works so well is because of how good they were.
Apparently half of her dialogue had to be cut because she kept bursting out laughing every time Matt Smith opened his mouth.
Is this where they met, or they already know each other?
Yeah, this was where they met.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
There was one thing I could not remember. I was trying to write it down when he was like trying to get them when they meet Mr. Wickham on the street, and he's like, "We really should be going. She's baking." Lady Catherine. He's like, "We don't want to be late." There's so many funny things. My favorite sequence, I think, for sure, I know it's obvious, is the first time the zombies attack at the party and the sisters just walk in slow motion.
Yeah.
And all 5 of them just fucking slaughter the entire room, just very calmly. And you cut to Darcy and you finally see him like, ooh.
Right.
It's just very well done. I love action movies. I think they're all really fun. I feel like this was handled well. Sometimes I do get a little uncomfortable when they make people who aren't strong enough do things that they're not capable of doing. But I thought the action, just like what we're saying with everything else, was incredibly realistic.
It even has a twist. Sit back and enjoy it.
Yeah.
The very end. Yeah. Did you catch on for the tag?
Yeah. We're not going to reveal what that is.
When the screen goes black, make sure you stay touched. There may be a sequence coming, or a sequel. I don't know.
It was shot beautifully.
I don't think so. It's been 5 years.
Yeah. Let's get on. This is a little filmy, but the production design was incredible.
Yeah, yes.
The production, the sets.
That's the thing that sells it, though. They committed to the bit. It's like, for instance, Scary Movie 3. It's funnier than the first 2, in my opinion, because Scary Movie 3 committed to the bit. They went 100% Ring, and when they were doing, like, the 8 Mile section, like, he actually was in a rap battle. It was ridiculous, but they did it, and they committed 100% to the bit. If you commit to your bit, like, you can't
God
he
damn
faltered.
it.
Yeah.
This movie is so fun. So if anybody wants to say fuck you to the Academy, I think the best way of doing it is to watch Pride and Prejudice and Zombies.
Zombies.
Write it in on the ballot for next year.
Write it in. Oh my god, it's so good. And we are going to take a very short break, and then we will be back with our final two segments. How the fuck did they do this? Where Dave talks us through a technical element.
Or attempts
to. And then a redemption where we redeem a movie that other people decided wasn't very good, and we give a second look, having to praise it, or else we have to drink.
Brace yourself for that.
Welcome back to the show. We're going to be doing our next segment called How the Fuck Did They Do That? How did they do that?
How did they do that?
How did they do that? But first, we need to give a shout out. So we really are drinking whenever we say something negative, which has been not so much. We've picked some really good movies.
I've been drinking without saying anything.
Jeff is also doing that. I'm the only responsible one here because, as you know, Australians don't drink very much.
That's
a lie.
Right. Yeah. Jim Jeffries is sober.
But all of our beer has been provided by our first sponsor,
Boom!
Carlos Barroso.
Delicious.
Who provided all the beer for our first podcast. So we're so thankful. And we would love for everybody to check out at... Shit, do I have to spell this? Okay, hold on. At DOCEDA. I fucked it up. Oh, there it is. Sorry. So follow Carlos Barroso at CBARROZO Bar 2019.
That's at C. Barroso Bar 2019.
Yeah, check out his beers. He's been making beer for a couple years now, and this is batch 172 that he's at.
Very talented man. Give him a follow. Okay, welcome back. We are going to rewind. We're going to go back to the first movie we were discussing today, 2017, because, come on, out of all the things we've been talking about, that movie is covered in How the Fuck Did They Do That moments.
And to prove that how drunk we are, John just said 2017. So I don't know if you guys knew this, but World War One was
Yeah,
3
that's a
years
Freudian
ago.
slip.
Oh my God, that's so good. No, we're leaving it in. That's happening.
Yep.
1917. So, preface. Dave, our Australian friend over here, Dave is a everything. He's a sound tech. An audio technician. He does a lot of post-production work for films. He's a DP. He is a filmmaker. Kind of a jack of all trades in the entertainment industry. So Dave specifically is going to walk us through how 1917 was captured with visual effects. By the way, it won an Oscar for Best Visual Effects, and because of the gimmick...
And this is why.
Because of the gimmick, a lot of people don't really understand that the stuff that they saw wasn't just seen. I think they just thought that they went to a preserved battleground site that apparently hasn't had grass grow in 100 years, and they thought they just filmed it, but a lot was actually placed in later to help make the shots work. So, Dave, how the fuck did they do that?
Well, it's how the fuck did they do everything? There was 97% of that film was a visual effects shot.
I'm so sorry. Did you say 97%?
97% of the film. I read that. That's
so when they cross no man's land, for instance, let's start at the beginning of this. They cross no man's land. It really feels like no man's land. They go over creeks. They go around barbed wire. They go into bunkers. So you're saying that's not still there?
Was it mostly background?
No, some of it is there. They were a lot of the visual effects in that respect were set extensions. So you're literally seeing, because it's very hard to find a wide open field these days. So you're seeing what they're filming is a field with a building in the background, and then that building is taken out. So you've got poor guys who have to sit there and roto these actors out, like rotoscope, and paint them out frame by frame, and then remove the stuff behind it and replace it with a forest or a clear blue sky, or in this case a cloudy sky, because they had to maintain the clouds the whole way through.
Yeah, okay, great. So then they get... Actually, I think the most interesting sequence, which is the one that they show a lot in a lot of the videos that they look at, is we flash forward, now we're at night, and now we're in that city that has been demolished. So it's basically just like cement structures that are still standing that probably have asbestos. Like they're uninhabitable, but there are still structures there in the city.
Yeah, before we blast off and let Dave talk about it, this is why Roger Deakins is the fucking man.
Right.
Because we're having a conversation about how the fuck did they do that. And this is going to be a perfect example of the way he filmed this. I remember sitting in the theater when they started doing that. If everyone remembers, it comes out of that amazing sequence where he gets shot and he blacks out. So he has killed the guy up the stairs in the other room, but he gets shot as well, and he like blacks out. When he comes to, he walks up the stairs, the camera crosses past him, the camera moves away from him through the window down, and you now are just the camera's point of view until he comes out of the building and catches up with you. And immediately you are seeing lights being spilled in the darkness, crossing over this entire town that's just total rubble. And I thought, like, oh my God, how did they do that? That must have been, I bet they had a wall of LEDs back here. Come to find out, as we're about to talk about, they used actual fucking flares
on a wire rig.
And the church was a giant LED rig.
It was a giant, it was a giant rig of lights.
A marriage of the two things, right? That's why it works so well.
Yeah, it was both. Like there's a really cool clip you can find online where they built a scale model of the city and had a little light on a piece of wire when they're analyzing the shadows before they even went into production. Like they're looking at how the shadows cast on this thing with this little tiny scale model of the set, and then they got out there, attached the players to a wire rig, and did it for real. And so this thing is flying up and over, and like it's a gigantic flare, and that's the only light source they used. So the entire set it's lit, with the exception of the church scene, of course, which was digitally replaced, because that's actually I want to say would be 30, 40 feet. I don't know. I don't do feet. I'm Australian. It's gigantic, a gigantic rig of lighting that's set to flicker like fire, and then they digitally replace that with the burning church.
But everything else is practical. All the overhead light, the flares are constantly
entirely practical
flares.
Yeah, it's an actual flare on a wire rig.
So, all right, so this is just one of those examples. Like, how the fuck did they do that? This is one of those perfect examples where it's easy for people to just say, "Well, put it in post." I think it happens all the time. And then you see a movie like this with somebody at the helm, two men who are from. Let's say, I'll say that they have theatrical natures. So even though Roger Deakins is not in the theater, if you look back on his career, he is a humongous fan of 360 practical lighting.
Oh, yeah.
And it just bleeds into everything he does. Everyone always tries to figure out why these movies look the same.
Any light that moves, he loves.
He loves, yeah.
What about this? So I almost feel like if they studied the shadows and all that and such going into this, but the only way that these people in this city can get heat is by small fires. So then when you add small fires, that adds completely different shadows that have to move.
Yes.
How does that affect? Is a lot of the spill of the fire in post, or is all of it still practical?
A lot of it is practical, as far as I know, yeah. Like I'm pretty sure the city was lit by the church and by fire. Like, as you can see, when he runs out of the city, they're going in literally just the daylight that was there. That's it. When he's running out of the city and jumps, that's actually a day for night shot.
Holy shit.
Yeah. That was filmed in like total daylight and darkened down.
Wow.
Wait. They didn't just do overnights? They didn't just say your next month is going to suck?
No, there were overnights, but that one particular shot where he runs out of all the lighting sources, obviously they couldn't do that and have him run into blackness, and nothing else kind of looked effective, so I think, and so they went for a day for night there.
I don't know if we have an answer to this, but when they crossed the bridge into the city, how did they get that camera across that?
Oh, that's some ballet. There are clips of, it's not a clip of that exact one, but it's a case of you have two camera operators holding a steady cam, like a rig, and that rig, and they specifically modified the new Arri camera to be able to do some of this stuff, but like that rig was then clipped onto a boom, which went down across the river and up, and they extended the boom out, and it came up, and on the other end, other operators picked it up off the boom and went with it.
First time I saw that when they were crossing No Man's Land. When they were crossing No Man's Land and they crossed that big bog.
Yeah.
And the first time they handed off and it just coasts across the water, I was like...
The best one is when he's coming out of, like, they're doing the scene down the trench, and they come around the actor, and then they come up, and as they come up, they attach it to the back. Like, first they take it off a rig, like off a crane, take it down into the trench, come up, put it on a truck, which then drives off.
Oh my God.
And then at the other end, someone takes it off the truck and goes with it. Like, that is all one shot. There's no stitching there.
I mean, the only time I've ever seen anything like that is The Revenant, where the horse goes off the cliff and then the camera follows the horse, and all of a sudden you're doing an aerial shot, and you're like, wait a second, I thought the camera was on land, and now all of a sudden it's floating in the air.
No, they pretty much got a stuntman drunk and taped a camera to him for that one. I can't back that up. I'm sorry.
In Argentina. So Chivo, Roger Deakins, is that one too for the Cinematography Hall of Fame? Should we give it, like, that's it, right?
Are we...
Have you seen his catalog? Like
next to them, like who else would compare to them?
Yeah.
Robert Richardson is pretty incredible.
Okay.
I know you don't like Tarantino films. There's a bunch of older guys who are legends as well. But right now, competing, it's kind of unfair.
He's the top of his game.
Yeah, both those guys are. So let's go into it for a second. Why is Roger Deakins the fucking man? Why is he always the fucking man?
Cinematographer,
Why has he
1918.
been the fucking man since 1984, his first film? Why do they all
has
look
attention
so
to detail?
good?
Like he has attention to detail, and he like
His prep is incredible.
yeah, oh yeah.
His
I mean,
prep-
they had
no
scale
one-
models of this stuff.
I've listened to so many interviews now where it sounds like this is something he does regularly. Sometimes you hear directors talk about it when they work with him, like they're kind of surprised. He likes to be involved from the beginning. He wants to be included in the development of storyboard,
Yeah.
production meetings, the
Also,
director's vision.
he's not going, oh, okay, I've 3-point lighting, I've got this. We're good. Okay, we can just, have a bit of sun shining through here and yeah, we're good. No, he's thinking about how can I do this in a way no one's ever seen it before. Like, so he's an entertainer.
Oh, fuck yeah. And he's Australian, right?
No, he's British.
God damn it, I'm the worst.
He is British.
man. It's
Dave,
okay.
I wanted to win so bad.
I feel like
Just
he's
drink
a
for that. That's negative.
Yeah, it's fuck.
I feel like he's a perfect combination of new and old, as I think any artist should be. He is a huge cinephile. When you listen to him, he's always referencing, like, oh yeah, last night I watched this, blah, blah, blah. It's just this amazing movie from the 40s or 50s or 60s. And he's bringing all of these elements into new technology. So he's figuring out how to marriage thing. The train robbery scene from Jesse James, when the train is pulling up and the light spills across the woods. It's such a
Yep.
simple effect. The train would never actually light something like that. And it's
Nope.
it's just so iconic because he's not trying to do anything that would be
Almost
I can't even-
all of Sicario, it's filmed outdoors.
Yeah,
that's
and
hard.
he is he fully embraced digital almost immediately as soon as it became available.
Yeah.
He's not a snob about filming on film. I love film. I do think there is an aesthetic that comes along with it. But then you see Roger Deakins movies, and you realize there is a way to make it look just as good.
Yeah.
I just don't know how he does it. It's probably his practical lighting.
I mean, a lot of it is his practical lighting, like,
But,
and the fact that
49
he rarely does stuff twice. Like, he will every single thing he does is unique to the project he's doing. He's not reiterating. He's not like, I learned how to do that. He will research the stuff. He will invent stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like no one else is doing that at the moment.
And he's a super passionate still photographer as well, isn't he?
Yeah, okay.
And he's huge into. I heard him talking about, with Jeff and I have acting backgrounds, and at some point in your training, you'll probably encounter using prototypes to build characters for. So like a picture from a book of somebody from like a different time period or something like that. He supposedly loves using prototype work, so he'll find still photography or paintings from a certain period, and he'll build an entire design off of how they lit the painting or the picture to try to get like that kind of look, which I know he's not the only person that does that in the cinematography game, but he seems to be extremely principled and also brave enough to try something new every single time.
Yeah. The one thing I'll bring it back to the effects side of it, and he had a lot of planning in this, is the stitching of the one takes, because obviously you can't shoot for that length. It'd be impossible to do that. So like they are multiple takes stitched together, but sometimes they're stitched together in full view of the camera. They don't do a crossover.
How?
Like
Tell me how-
normally you would pass someone in front of the camera and put.
Now
put
is
it
that
like a
because they're
little cut
using
there.
is the aperture wider?
No, sometimes it just wasn't practical. Like they would get to a certain point, it's like, okay, we're going to cut there. What we've got is good, and we want to continue from this point. So they would literally, and they weren't filming motion track either, so they would literally line up the eyes and go from there, and then hand it over to the visual effects guys who put it in Nuke and use a morph to actually morph one scene to the other. They do it on a slight head movement, so you don't really notice, but there's all these morph takes where the stitches are together. And like I said, when someone on the red carpet asked him about the transitions, he was like, yeah, they've guessed one correctly, because most of them happen right in front of your face and you don't even notice. And he asked him to, in that same interview, actually, to reveal where one of the stitching, where one of the cuts was. And he's like, well, it goes to black, there's one. And walked away. It was like, he's not going to tell you.
Right.
They're so well done. Like, it's in full view. You don't even notice.
Did they have to stitch in the clouds? Because the clouds change. I think one of the benefits of shooting in clouds isn't just the gloom over the entire film. It's what they say, like with plane movies, you want some clouds because you can see how fast planes move. But with like something like this, you would want it to just be cloudy all the time. So just go to Scotland or North England.
In all the Q&As I've seen, he said a lot of the time they spent waiting for clouds.
Yeah.
And waiting for the weather to be right.
But then you have to know which take you're going to use in the one before, right? Like if you're thinking about this as a filmmaker and you're doing, let's assume, even though it's supposed to be filmed in one continuous take, you do multiple takes. You have to know how the clouds look at the end of the take you're going to use in order to properly begin the next take.
I think just in general it was cloud coverage. He just didn't
Just
want
in
to have
general.
to darken the scene.
I mean, it would be possible to stitch those clouds in
Right.
Until the camera pans and then go to whatever the sky
But
is.
that is why it looks the way it does, is because he did have the discipline to say, no, we're waiting.
They planned this.
We might get
like
one take
crazy,
today, but we have to do it.
Let's wrap this up by the last question, which is, it seems like probably something that it would almost have to be out of his element because nature takes over, which is going down the river. Like, how is this different from the Kevin Bacon movie? What's that one with Meryl Streep? Is it How the River Runs Wild, or is it
River Wild?
Is it just River Wild? I
think so.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
like,
the River
how
Wild.
do you go from the city down the river back up? Do they put it on a boat? How do they do it?
That was filmed in a water park.
God damn it! Of course it fucking was.
Yeah, he jumped.
Yeah,
they cut.
let's go to Six Flags
They cut.
Grand Adventure
They
for
cut
this
after
one.
he jumped. I can't remember what water park they said it was, but that was filmed in a water park in a river ride, as such.
That is. Can you imagine just pitching that? Like, I can't imagine walking to the studio and say, "Oh no, no, we'll just go to water park," and they're like, "No, he has to go down this river," and it's like,
Yeah.
well,
No,
we got it.
they built up the back section,
Sure.
and yeah,
Anything else to add to the how the fuck did I did this section?
I think we've covered most of it, except for the plane.
Yeah, let's talk about that really quickly, yeah.
Please.
So the plane is a multi-composite. The beginning of it is CG. I mean, I'm going to totally ruin this for you because you mentioned this earlier, and I'm sorry. But the point when it flies up, it's CG. From the point where it hits the barn, it's replaced by a blue screen element, where they've built a section of the barn and smashed the plane and an actual physical plane into it on blue screen. And from that point on, it's pretty much a blue screen element, and then it's replaced by the actual set when they drag the guy out of it.
Is that Stump Pilot's family well taken care of?
Right. Yeah.
So they crashed a real plane.
They built a replica of it and smashed it into a replica barn on a set in front of a blue screen.
But even
to
though it's a
composite.
replica, it's still a real replica plane.
Yeah. But probably not real boards. I mean,
Right. Right. It wasn't like an F-35.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure, I'm not 100% sure, but I think most of the fire was added digitally.
Yeah, I could believe that. It did.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised by that.
Because it had, I mean, the one thing that the guys doing the visual effects have mentioned in like interviews is that like when you get a 4-second visual effects shot, it's awesome. When you get a 20-second visual effects shot, that's hell on earth because you've got to sell that for 20 seconds. It's not like it happened and move away. Right. Like you've got to sell that thing for 20 seconds. So it was a multiple amount of composites, and they couldn't cut away either. So they had to hold this thing on screen convincingly for 20 seconds.
Well, let's praise it. Let's just wrap it up with just saying, once again, every now and then, there's so many two sides of this camp. How much should we lean into CGI? How much should we try to do practical? I think the masters are proving to you that there is a way, just like every other new technology, to use it tastefully and to not lean into it lazily and just it depend on the imagination of the audience. When you do it well, you will not know that how much percentage of this movie had visual effects in it. 97%. So
yeah, I picture Roger Deakins there holding a Dos Equis. It's like, I don't always use visual effects, but when I do,
and let's call the technician storytellers. I love that.
They are.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. Just to be on him one more time, Roger, first and foremost, it seems like in the interviews, every time he talks about why he's making certain decisions, it exclusively comes from what's happening in the story and the character. He is not a aesthetic only kind of person. That's why he likes to be on board as soon as possible in development, because he wants to know what is happening with the story.
He is a truly visionary visualizer.
Yeah. All hell Roger Deakins.
Yeah. And given that we've just talked about visual effects, it's a perfect segue into our next segment.
Was it really that bad?
Was it really that bad?
Was it really that bad? So, this is the segment which we'll be talking about a movie that everyone is convinced it is really that bad. And we're going to do our best to try to prove to you. You know what? Was it really that bad?
It has a 2.8 on IMDb.
We haven't identified it yet, but that probably gives it away.
All right, we'll give you a couple hints here.
Worst movie of all time.
It came out around Christmas time. It got slashed before it even came out. This was one of those movies that had a rollout with one amazing trailer that hit the ground in somewhere in October, or I want to say maybe it was before that.
Okay, the second trailer was amazing. The first one was a disaster.
And
The first one was bad.
amazing.
Like,
I didn't say
okay, I
It was like
sorry,
Sonic. Yeah,
sorry.
It was like Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yeah,
bad.
cheers,
Damn it.
cheers.
Thank you, Carlos.
So. We're talking about cats. That's what we're talking about.
cats.
Yeah, we're talking about cats.
We all sat down and watched it within the last day or so, and we have not discussed it with each other
At all.
I'm very excited to see.
Nobody's taking notes. We're going to freeform this.
All right.
Jeff,
But
Jeff
every
probably
time we
took
say
notes.
something negative, we have to drink. So
Yes.
we have to try to. Okay, I'm gonna start with this.
Go.
Cats is one of the worst musicals ever written.
Drink.
Okay, fine. I know.
Yeah,
I know.
that's one.
So I suppose it doesn't have to be a literal translation when you take it from stage to screen. But this movie was, I mean, what did you expect? Is what I want to know.
That's the biggest question I think you
This
walk away
musical's
with.
bad. I fell asleep twice. One time I saw it, it got rained out, and I was laughing. Like I still don't know what a fucking Jellicle cat is. And then at the end, we're like, we're gonna choose the Jellicle cat, and I was like, but doesn't the Jellicle cat die?
All right, so
I don't
let's
know
all
anything that's happening.
let's all share our personal story with cats first of all, because I had a very similar experience. When I was young, we started going to the theater a little bit, saw a couple shows, and I was like, you know what, this is pretty sweet. And my mom was like, man, you should maybe consider getting involved with this. I think you could do it. And we went to go see Cats, and I almost threw the towel in right there. It was like 6th grade, and I thought it was one of the worst things I had ever seen. I
They're
didn't know anything I was
introducing new
talking
characters
about.
2 hours in that you don't care about. They're
Just
so
didn't
stupid.
get it. There are a couple good songs in it, but it just didn't call to me. Now, I have a feeling our third member over here has a very different story. Dave, what was your
Fuck
experience?
you guys.
Dave actually is the only cat owner out of the
When
group.
I was 14, my mother took me to see Cats. It was the first biggest musical I've ever seen, and that kicked off my entire 30-year
That's
career
why he is sitting
in
here.
the entertainment
That's
industry.
Why he is sitting
I
here.
am coming at you over this. This movie was great.
yeah,
There was nothing wrong with this film.
I'm drinking.
Okay,
You
not
said that.
quite anything wrong with this film.
All right, let's just lean into it immediately. Let's just go ahead and start talking about it. I don't understand why people hated this movie so much. I really don't get it.
I mean,
After the thing we just said, I'm not a huge fan of that show. I don't really understand it. The first thought in my mind when it was finished was, I don't understand why everybody was so upset. I don't understand why everybody was so angry about the visual effects. I don't get the hate.
I have
that it's getting
literally
right
stopped
now.
listening to critics now. Like I'll just stop reading all the crap that's out there because like this movie, granted, Cats is a niche thing. It's like if you're a fan of musicals, or in particular that musical, you're going to love this film. It's fairly faithful. Tom Hooper learnt from some of the shortcomings of Les Mis, where I felt he was shooting a stage musical. This time, Cats is bigger. The soundtrack is improved.
He made a cinematic version.
The cameras move. Like some of the sequences are amazing. But again, it also has the dubious honor of being the first ever movie to get a day one release, where they released an updated version of it the day after or the week after the film came out.
Which is,
They admitted their faults. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine like a politician being like, "By the way, I admit that I sucked," and then
Yeah, it's like, sorry, I made a typo. Okay, your career's over.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Cancel culture.
Yeah.
Well, here's what I'm gonna guess as to what the negative. And I'm ready to drink. I'm ready. Thank you, Carlos. I'm ready to go. So the musical pretty early on, the whole thing feels like an acid trip, right? It's just like purple and red and blue light being thrown at you. And they decided to make the white cat, Victoria, the lead, but not really. They just need somebody there the whole time so that we can relate to them.
Victoria was always the lead.
Yeah. But in this case, she's always there.
The whole story is her journey. It's meant to be from her perspective.
The whole thing feels like an acid trip. And then it's like, there's one part, so when they go inside, and they basically do like 3 sequences in a row, where you're like, I don't know what the fuck's going on at all. So they open, Jellicle Ball happens very early, and then right away they go inside, and they have the whole mice sequence, where the mice are putting on a show for the cats, and then the cockroach, sorry, not cockroach, the ants are dancing, and...
They're cockroaches.
They're cockroaches.
Yeah, right. And then you have...
Had you possibly taken hallucinogenics when you watched this?
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't know. Like, I think truly to anybody who hated the movie, just think for a second. Did you take hallucinogens before you saw the movie?
Yeah.
She unzips her fur, and so all this stuff happens right away. And then James Corden comes in, and he starts making jokes about how like they're not real cats. I think there's one spot where he actually goes, "Everybody listen to these cats," and he's like saying it with quotes where you're like, are they taking this seriously or not? My thesis here is this. After that, when they go into the actual dance, when the moon comes out, that is the show in its best form. Everybody looks great. The dancing's awesome. The music's hot. It's like it's a full moon.
Again,
it makes more sense. But it's like you have to get through this 45-minute stretch that ultimately there's no plot. It's just like this cat, then this cat, then this cat, then this cat, then mice, then cockroaches, then ants, then fur. Then why do these cats have white sneakers on their feet but not on their hands? It's like all that shit you have to get through because the whole fucking show makes no sense.
I mean, it's based on a book of poems.
It's based on a book of
loosely
poems written by someone who is
poems.
probably on hallucinogenic drugs for people who have never taken them who wanted to know what they were like.
Dude, I sat there in the first 5 minutes of the stage musical when I was a kid, and like the overture started, and it absolutely blew my mind. So I was probably willing to go a little bit further than most people to accept this movie
this is
for what it is.
back to back.
But I mean, you're watching a movie version of the musical Cats. What the fuck do you think was going to happen?
Yeah. Did you think it was going to be a plot? Do you think it was going to make sense?
What?
Judi Dench doesn't even come in for an hour. Like, what do you think was going to happen?
Yeah, it's like, oh, they leave a cat in the middle of the courtyard, and then she gets up and fights fucking Optimus Prime. No, it's a movie about cats having a once-a-year event. And they actually, in my opinion, had more plot in the movie than the musical communicates.
100%. 100%. The musical communicates no plot. There's something, I think it was the Gus the theater cat in the musical, where I'm like, why do I need to care about this? Is Grisabella going to die? Like, why do I care about Gus?
Also,
Gus...
like Ian McKellen. I can watch Ian McKellen all fucking
that was
day.
one of my
Like
favorite parts.
he
When
was
the,
great.
Gus the theater cat got up there and started singing about how they used to get trained for the theater.
Yeah, if you stick the landing but you don't do a backflip,
also anyone that thought
the Olympics,
anyone that thought that may have been a fake nose when he was Gandalf, that's clearly a real nose. Cats don't have noses that large. That's Ian McKellen's nose.
Are they cats? They make fun of it themselves.
They are cats. Yes, it's called.
The best ones
it's called
movie,
Cats.
The best ones in this movie are the non-celebrities. So shout out to all the non-celebrities. Shout out to like Robert Fairchild.
Let's put lemurs in it. No one will see it coming.
Yeah.
What's up with the dancing ants? And then they ate some and
cockroaches.
The cockroaches, yes.
But they said ants. I can't be wrong about 10 things in this podcast.
Rebel Wilson's number?
No, after that one. There's another thing where they look under
I'm just going to pick up my beer in preparation
when
for this.
Rebel Wilson, they're under the table and they're dancing.
She looks at mice and then the cockroaches. I thought there were also ants. It doesn't even fucking matter. Again, I think I was on drugs and I wasn't. I don't know if I was, but I wasn't. But I might have been.
Look,
I saw
this
Tommy,
is
and
this
Tommy
is what
was
you
like
really need to take away from this movie. These cats are all really nice. They introduce her to all of them.
Yeah.
They explain through song each kind of cat, and at the end of it, she learns that she's one of them, a jellicle cat, but she still doesn't really know her name,
and she still doesn't know what a fucking jellicle cat is. Nobody knows.
Check it out. So I found a review of this movie called, quote, Cats Review. We didn't see it, but we did take military grade LSD and go to Petco. So it's a mock review of the movie about them actually having the experience of getting on acid and going to a pet store.
Basically a lot of people, I mean, this movie was hated before it even came out.
But the point of this article, I think the point they make, which I agree with, is that if you went into it thinking it was going to feel different than 3 hits of acid at Petco, then you were the problem.
Yeah.
Not the movie.
It's like you went and saw a movie of the musical Cats and you didn't like it. Did you go and see the musical Cats? No. Cool. Well, then, you're not going to like this film.
Yeah.
It's not for you.
Yeah.
And that's fine. There are allowed to be things that are not for you.
All right, I'm going to talk about what didn't work for me.
He has a beer in his hand. He's ready to go.
All right.
There were 3 endings. The ending that's similar to the show.
No, I'm sorry. I'm going to have to agree with him on that one.
No, there are, because we watched it again.
That's a flaw. That's a flaw of the show, though.
It is a flaw of the show. I felt that way when I saw it live. I remember when I was fucking 12 years old, and I remember this. When she ascends, when she is chosen, that's the end of the show.
Yeah.
And yet the movie did it too. There are 2 other endings where Deuteronomy basically
Judi Dench.
Yeah, addresses the audience and tells you what you've learned about cats.
Which is that they're not dogs.
That they're not dogs, which is silly. Like, I feel like we already learned that. And then there's another moment after that where they had...
That was cute in the 80s.
Yeah, where there was like a third one after that. So I also felt like it was kind of a shame. I am a hardcore believer, whatever the phrase is, if you have a strong ending, you can probably redeem the rest of your film. If it ends well, you will get people to say, it actually wasn't that bad, or I enjoyed it. The ending with Jennifer Hudson, when she actually does float up into that balloon and she gets picked, it was emotional. Somehow it got there, and they landed the moment.
Can I just interject? Jennifer Hudson doing Memory, I nearly burst into fucking tears.
Really?
Yeah, it was amazing.
I liked it
when she got to the point where I knew the belt was coming, and she hit it and just went with it, and I'm like, yeah.
Yeah,
Like, back.
we were all waiting for that because they made her like.
I got my
sing
I
for
got my
the rest of it.
headphones on, listening. I probably
was-
like woke up half the house.
It was very. That was Les Mis-esque for me, but it worked out.
Yeah, he did what he stayed on her the whole time
Yeah.
for memory, just like he did.
And she was
with
like
Anne
kind of
Hathaway.
shaky because she was like, we don't want to forget while she's singing this that she's tattered. Whereas in the musical, it's like her redemption moment. It's like the last.
Did they record this live? Did they
No, I
record
don't
the
think they
singing
did.
live?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
No,
Wow,
'cause,
that's
I
pretty
mean-
impressive that they lip synced all that. That's pretty
Yeah,
impressive.
I mean,
It
sometimes
sounds really perfect.
that was my one gripe, I must say, and I'm going to drink for this. But
Yeah.
sometimes they syncopated the vocals a little bit more than I liked.
I love that. We're doing a cat spot, and we're like, well, I had one gripe with this.
Only one.
It's just true.
Only one. So the endings frustrated me. I felt like they could have redeemed a lot of the problems with it if they had let people leave the theater having a really rewarding emotional moment for Grisabella, or whatever that cat's name is. It just seemed like the obvious way to go out. We got it. I don't think we needed anything other beyond that, and I think that was one reason people were so frustrated, was because it turned a corner back into the strange part that didn't work for the movie. Was when they just, for no reason at all, went into another musical number. That frustrated me. Visual effects, I'm going to go ahead and stand up for them.
Yeah,
We can talk
Yeah.
about this.
And the lighting was cool.
I laughed out loud at what Rebel Wilson and James
Yeah.
Corden did at the
Yeah.
Oscars. It was very funny, but obviously there was a backlash.
Little
I'm sure
sore
everybody
point.
heard about it.
Yeah.
Everyone heard about the backlash in the
was a
visual
sore
effects
point.
community. I
I'm-
don't
I-
understand why they felt so comfortable doing that. I'm not going to
I
blame
must
the
say,
actors.
the night-
Somebody in the
night
Academy
before-
wrote that.
The night
So-
before at the Spirit Awards, when I believe they were announcing cinematography, and they made jokes about the cinematographer is that when you come out of your trailer, he's the guy who picks you up in the car and drives you to set.
Oh yeah, Will,
And-
Will
Yeah.
Ferrell.
Yeah.
No, it's Will Ferrell and
And
Julia Louis-Dreyfus.
nobody
It's at
got
the Oscars.
nobody got offended over that because it was ridiculous.
Yeah.
What were you expecting as an audience member when you watched that movie? Were you going in expecting realism?
Yeah.
What the
We're
fuck were
going
you
to stand
expecting?
on 2 feet.
I didn't care about any of
The cat tap dances. Like,
Okay.
like, yeah, they're not on 4 feet. They're not cats. I'm sorry.
just to wrap it up, if you've seen the musical, you're probably going to like the movie. It's a very, very accurate representation, and they've kicked it up a notch from the stage musical. So it's a great improvement over the musical. There's more plot line. The music is better. Some of the characters are fantastic. Taylor Swift was awesome.
Her 8 minutes were awesome for sure.
Yeah, her 8 minutes in the film are
Which one
amazing.
was she?
She was Bumbalina.
So she
Yeah.
was the other
Ballerina.
robber.
Bumbalina.
She sang McCavity.
I'm for Carlos Beers deep in.
yeah,
Magical.
No. That
No,
magical
she
Mr.
sang-
Mistopheles.
she sang,
McCavity.
McCavity.
Yeah, I forget
Yeah.
how it goes. I forget how that song goes.
McCavity. I can't.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
She
Made
came
up
from like the
thing.
ceiling. They looked up and they thought it was McCavity and it was actually her.
Yeah. All right, so
'Cause-
let's talk about
'cause McCavity's
let's talk
not
about
there.
the performances for a little bit. What did you think of? Did anybody stand out? Did you hate anybody? Did you love anybody?
Judy stuck out. Judy was great, and then the non celebrities were
The
great.
main dude at the beginning who comes back and sings
Yep.
something else at the end. He was good. The main gray cat.
Yes.
The main great cat. Yeah. I'm gonna try to find.
What do you think of Idris?
I have his name.
I didn't mind him at all.
No,
people
Idris is
were
fine.
talking shit about him.
I can't
thought
help
he
but
was
think.
fine.
I was like, even as a cat, he's a villain. Like he's always the villain in every single movie.
It's
He's the villain. in
Robbie
Jungle Book.
Fairchild was his name.
Robbie Fairchild, yes, ABT dancer, right? He's huge. He's again the non-dancers. Robbie Fairchild, the ballet dancer.
the dancing
He's
was really
awesome.
great.
Yeah.
This is-
Francesca Hayward has introducing. This was like her first film. I'm guessing
She's Victoria?
Yeah, she was Victoria. She was amazing.
Yeah, she was cool.
Dance, especially at the end when they
good.
have their. Even though I just picked on those 3 endings, but there was a lovely moment without dialogue or singing where they were just dancing in the square, and she finally leads the dance and
Yeah.
like takes off, and it was really gorgeous. I kind of wanted more of that. I feel like a lot of
Yeah.
I think it may have been more effective cinematically. I'll drink if I need to. It may have been more effective cinematically for them to take some of the singing out and to tell a little bit more
Yeah,
of the
I'm with
story
you.
with the
I'm
way
with
the
you.
cats related to each
Yeah,
other.
make it cinematic and relate. Who fits into what
Because I
category?
was
how they
on
relate.
board whenever they were just
They touched on that a
dancing and
little
playing
bit,
and
but
stuff.
yeah.
They could have gone farther.
That moment was beautiful.
Stephen McRae, Skimbleshanks, who was the tap dancing one, was great. And
Yes.
they went on the train tracks, and rather than be like a hokey, like, oh, there's cats on the train in case there's mice, like the way they tap danced on the rails and stuff.
Yeah, Dave, get your beer. You hated that part.
That
didn't you?
I hated
Yeah.
I hated the visual effects in that part.
Boom,
Okay,
drink
but
up.
he was good.
That
Though.
was-
We're
I
giving
agree.
credits. We're giving
It
credits
was
to
a good moment.
performances. He did everything he needed to do. And Stephen McRae did a great job.
That was so we'll blame Tom for that. I'm not blaming
Sure.
the visual effects.
Yeah, no,
of it.
you
It
don't-
was
you
the
don't-
design
You
of
know
that
what I
whole
want to give a
thing.
shout out
Was,
to? Everybody that did the tails. I feel like whoever did the tails,
They had
the
life.
visual effects, were horny. Did you notice this? Whenever the cats were excited, the tails were like straight up.
I mean, it's a very.
I couldn't
There's
not
a
watch
lot of sexuality and
There was a lot of sensuality, a lot of sexuality. There's a lot of they want this to be like, right? Like a very sensual.
I felt that way when
trippy-
the musical. It makes me feel that way too. I mean, they're all
This was
really
too
sexy
intense.
dancers and like fucking tight spandex with fur. They're
Yeah.
basically, what are those people called that are into?
I don't know. I feel like if
Furries.
you...
They're called furries.
They're called
Yeah,
furries.
yeah, they're called
It's a
furries.
furry
Yeah.
convention by accident.
Okay, this
Cats
is
theaters
going to
full
a
of
dark
furries.
place.
No,
this is
We're gonna rein this back
If you
in.
are a furry and you haven't seen
We
this
are
movie,
allies of the furry.
Okay, we need to wrap this up. So basically, Cats, if you like the musical, you'll like the movie.
If your partner says we were watching Cats, we gave you some things to think about.
have a couple beers,
Yeah.
smoke something. Do not
Sit-
think too hard about it. Just enjoy yourself.
Yeah,
just
just-
sit down and watch.
Look at the lighting, look at
What,
the
do,
tails.
do not freak out and run out of the
Yeah,
apartment.
I challenge you
That's bad.
to sit down. I bet you will not have a bad time.
Fellas, we've redeemed some movies. We've talked about...
And ladies,
I was talking to you specifically. The two of you.
well, I'm not sure what.
We talked about 1917. We talked about Paths of Glory. We talked about Little Women. We talked about Pride plus Prejudice plus zombies. We talked about Cats. And we talked about Roger Deakins and how the fuck he did